Today I'm going to do a workshop on resilience. Resilience is defined as the power or the ability of people to recover quickly from a setback, from things like depression, illness, overwork, or any other adversity. So why do we need resilience? We need resilience to deal with the ups and downs and difficulties that come and happen to us in our lives. We need to endure hard knocks at different times. We need to deal with the different suffering experiences that happen to ourselves and the people that we care about. And when any of these things happen, or any of these difficult things happen in life, we need to kind of bounce back or to learn from our experience and grow and develop. So how have we built resilience in our lives? How have we developed our resilience? From the very beginning, when we were young, small children, we have difficult experiences, and as we're quite vulnerable inside, quite emotional, we will learn to build defenses or protective mechanisms to help us to deal with the difficulties that happen us in our lives. And these protective patterns or defense mechanisms, as they're called, are part of our resilience strategy, you could call it. It's unconsciously made. We don't plan these things. It just happens. It unfolds as we grow and develop. Let's say, for example, as a child, if you had a parent or someone in your life who was very perfectionistic and liked things to be done really, really well. So you might find that if you start to give out to yourself in your head before the other person does, that it protects you, it almost prepares you for what's going to happen. So if somebody is going to expect a lot from you, you start to expect a lot from yourself, and then you're preempting the issue that's going to happen. And that could be a good resilience strategy that might help for a while, but then maybe later on in life you might find that you're very critical of yourself, and that strategy might not work so well, or could get stronger and stronger until that strategy is too much. So we have developed different resilience strategies since we were young children, and a lot of our patterns will come from that earlier stage in life. However, we're always growing and we're always developing our resilience, and we're always learning, or we have the potential to always be learning, new ways to manage and cope with difficulties in life. Either way, it's important to know that resilience is a skill that can be learned, that we can grow and develop our resilience skills. Many people can develop these different skills quite quickly. First of all, you need to know what your resilience strategies are already and how you manage stress, and then what areas or where you want to build your resilience. Interestingly, a misconception about resilience can be that it's a toughness that only a few unique or heroic people can have. But actually, resilience is something that we all have to one degree or another. And resilience is quite complex because we'll have different types of resilience towards different situations in life, and different situations coming together can bring together different resilience strategies that we have developed. So what are some of the resilience skills that we could develop or we might like to develop? So these include things like positive future expectations, personal self-control, belief in your abilities. Resilient people tend to have healthy self-esteem. They tend to have good coping skills, tend to be good with problem solving, and have things like optimistic thinking, very motivated or initiative. They have a drive to succeed or to do things. And when you combine these different characteristics, it can show a person that's quite confident, self-assured, a strong sense of self, and know how to manage and maneuver through life's difficulties. A resilient person will often feel that they can do something about a situation, and that they can work with it, and that they can learn from their hardships, that they can grow and develop, and they can see that they can come out the other side, that there's a way around things, that there's a way of working to get to where they need to go in life. Resilient individuals are more likely to be quite positive, to learn, take opportunities, to look for support, seeking mentors, get involved in activities and finding partners that are supportive for them. They're more likely to think of negative things as temporary. In order to understand how we work and how our minds work, it can be helpful to understand about our new brain and our old brain, because these things really affect our resilience and how we are managing with stresses in life. So the two brains, the old brain and the new brain, can be quite conflicting. Our reptilian brain and our mammalian brain evolved from when we were reptiles or mammals. Our reptilian or our old brain helps us to stay alive because it helps us to cope with threats and with danger. It keeps our heart beating, it keeps our digestion going and our kidneys and our liver working. It controls our autonomic nervous system, which involves things like our fight or flight, which helps us, protects us, to keeps us away from danger. It's focused on staying safe, having enough food to eat, being comfortable, warm, procreating and having shelter. Whereas our new brain allows us to think, to create, to fantasize, imagine, to have a sense of self, to plan for the future, to reason and think about things. So there's quite a big difference between the old brain and the new brain, which is a part of what makes us different in many ways to other animals. We imagine, we create, we plan things, we think, we fantasize, we have all these artistic pieces like art and music, dancing, poetry. Part of this new brain is having a sense of self, sort of being able to imagine who we are and where we fit into society, and to think about ourselves as separate to the group. Part of this is then we can plan revenge, we can create weapons and have wars, we can focus on winning, we can ruminate and think over and over about something that happened that we didn't like and that we want to change. We can then start to criticize ourselves. We can use that creative mind to be critical. So let's look at emotions. There are 6 primary emotions. These include happiness, sadness, disgust, surprise, anger and fear. Emotions are a physical experience. So for example, if you get a fright, adrenaline will surge through the body, and if you really pay attention you can feel it almost flood throughout the body. It happens extremely fast. The hormone rushes through the body and you feel these sensations all over your body. Equally, if you feel love, like for the example, the first time a baby smiles at you, you can feel this wash of love or caring throughout your body, and everywhere becomes kind of warm and fuzzy. So emotions sort of rush through the body or flow through the body very quickly, and we get an all-over experience of whatever the emotion is that we are feeling. The reason I'm looking at the old brain and the new brain is that the old brain was involved in protection and safety and survival, whereas the new brain is involved in imagination, planning, rumination, reasoning. So if you mix the old and new brain together, that's when things get a bit complicated, because the old brain has this kind of animal aspect to it that is very connected to adrenaline. And when we go into adrenaline and the fight or flight system, basically the purpose of the fight or flight system was if we had a threat when we were cave dwellers and say some animal came to attack us, we needed to be able to get away as fast as possible. So when adrenaline surges through the body, your pupils dilate so that you can take in everything around you. You become hypervigilant. Your breathing changes. The blood goes to your lungs so that you can breathe shallower and get more air in. So oxygen will mix with glucose in the body very quickly and create energy. And the blood will go to your arms and legs so that you can run or fight, and you will slow down your digestion. So a lot of the old brain traits are kind of animalistic and protective, whereas the new brain traits are creative, are about planning, imagination, reasoning. And if we mix the two together, if we get caught in old brain states of anxiety or anger or fear, and we add to that this creative, ruminative, planning new brain, what can happen if the wrong mix comes together, we can get stuck in being very critical, in ruminating negatively, in judging, and we can be very hard on ourselves and on the people around us. And really what we need to do is to learn how to bring the two brains together in a positive way, that we are supportive and nurturing of ourselves and others. And to do that, we need to focus on kindness or compassion. We need to focus on being positive towards ourselves and towards others. Having a kindness, understanding how our minds work, understanding how our emotions work, and being accepting and kind towards ourselves. When we are small, we will have situations happen that generate a sense of fear. For example, you might fall and get a fright. Now, because as children we're totally connected to our parents or whoever our primary carers are, the response of that carer will affect how we act when we get a fright. So if you fall as a child and get a fright, and you look up at your parent and your parent looks like, this is okay, it's fine, then you might feel like, oh, maybe I'll be okay. If you look at your parent and the parent looks scared, then you might become more scared as a child. It might frighten you more. So we learn part of our resilience from the people around us and how they are dealing with difficulties. One way of dealing with fear is to get angry, to become protective. And that can be quite a healthy, natural response, to have a little bit of anger. Not to get into a long-lasting anger that keeps coming back and back, but to have a small amount of anger, or the appropriate amount of anger for the situation, depending on how much protection we need. And then when we have dealt with the situation, to let the anger go. That would be a healthy way of managing anger. Anger is connected to our strength and our power, and it's a very important part of our protection system. So having an appropriate anger response at times is healthy if it keeps us safe. So there are many, many ways of building resilience, and every situation and every experience in life is an opportunity to learn from and grow and build your resilience. So I would suggest that going forward, anytime you have a difficult experience in life, to look at that and think, okay, what did I do well there? What could I have done better? What have I learned from this situation? How will I manage this kind of thing if it happens again in the future? Part of learning about our resilience is about looking at our past and looking at how we were resilient in the past. So these are called hidden strengths, because often we don't realize that actually we have quite a bit of resilience already. As part of this workshop, I'd like you to write down times in your life that were difficult. So if you could fill in the worksheet that comes with this workshop, and it will have 3 different times in your life where you had difficulties. So one is a very minor difficulty that maybe happened many times, like issues with a friend that you need to go through, or you need to address, you need to ask them about. So writing down how you manage smaller difficulties in your life that come up regularly, and what your strategy is with them. What have you done well in the past? By that, it could be that you ask the person directly about certain things, or that you come up with ways of helping support someone. So think about different ways that you have managed minor difficulties in life. And these are your strengths. These are your resilience strategy. Then I want you to look at more medium-sized difficulties in life, things that maybe don't happen that often, and how you have managed them. What have you done to deal with these difficulties? And then finally look at something that was bigger in your life, big difficulties that you've been through, and what did you do to help you get through them. And you might find that some things you did aren't very helpful or aren't that supportive, but I'm sure there are some aspects of how you've dealt with things that are helpful, that some parts of going through a difficult time are helpful resilience strategies. So some examples of hidden strengths are having a sense of humour to manage a situation, or being supportive of other people to help you to manage the difficulty, or learning new skills or techniques to help you grow and develop to address or change to work with a difficult situation. Other hidden strengths are things like being able to work hard, to keep pushing through, to have problem-solving skills that help you to figure things out. Even being able to relax and unwind are resilience strategies, because you need to relax in order to have the clarity the next day to continue to work with the difficulty. I like to think of resilience as having sort of two sides. So one is the inner resilience, managing our emotions, dealing with how we're feeling, learning ways to cope with our anger and our fear, to cope with our inner distress. And then outer resilience is more about how we deal with the external world, so how we function, and less about how we are feeling. Outer resilience includes more kind of well-known life skills like reaching out for support, having organisational skills, being proactive, taking initiative, self-care, having a healthy regime, doing your exercise, looking after your diet, getting enough sleep and rest, or having a good social life. So there's kind of a difference between the inner resilience and the outer resilience. The outer resilience in your engagement in life, and the inner resilience in your engagement with your emotions inside. A very important tool in learning how to manage our inner resilience is to be able to observe what's happening inside. So be able to observe our mind, observe our feelings, to watch what's going on and not get lost in what's going on. So if your mind is thinking very negatively and giving out to you and you're feeling very stressed, to be able to see that and go, oh, I notice that my mind is being very, is racing, is giving me a hard time, and I'm feeling very stressed, as opposed to just being lost in the experience of being stressed, being critical of yourself and feeling stressed. So watching it instead of being lost in it. That observer helps you to separate a little bit more from what is happening internally. So if we over-identify with what our thoughts are saying and how we're feeling, then we are lost in it. That is who we have become. But when we observe it, we are no longer lost in it. We see it, and therefore we have a bit of space. And when we have a bit of space, we can add in another bit that says, well, hang on a second, maybe I don't agree with that. Or maybe that's not the truth. Maybe there's other possibilities. And we can start to communicate with ourselves and change those inner voices a little bit. So mindfulness as a technique allows us to have this inner observer, and it encourages us to slow down a little bit, to relax the neck and shoulders, relax your muscles in your body, to take a breath and slow down a little bit. And by taking a breath, I mean taking a deeper breath down into your belly and trying to take stock, to slow down and see what's going on, and not necessarily just run with what's happening inside. To stop and try and address what's happening inside and have a bit more movability in there, more manageability in your internal world. So I'm going to tell you some of the characteristics of resilience, and I want you to note if you feel you have some of these, or if you have some of them a little bit but you'd like to develop them, or if you don't have some of these and it's important for you to build up these characteristics. So one is having positive future expectations. So assuming that things will be good in the future, a sort of a sense of trusting in the future that you will make things right or you will figure things out. So that is one very important characteristic of being resilient. Another one is having personal control. Well, I think personal management might be a better way to describe it, because controlling ourselves can be quite restrictive, and we don't tend to cope very well with controlling ourselves, not for too long anyway. But having a way of managing ourselves, managing our emotions, managing our life, managing the skills, managing how we do things, managing how we feel, which managing how you feel doesn't mean that you stop feeling something. It just means that if there's anger, you know how to allow it up and out, to deal with it and to put it behind you, as opposed to pushing it down and repressing it. That it's the same with fear, that you know how to deal with these emotions and move through them, as opposed to pushing them down or pretending they're not there. So managing having personal management skills so that we feel kind of confident in ourselves, because we know how to deal with how we are and who we are when difficult situations arise. Another characteristic of resilience is to have a belief in our own abilities and to have a kind of a strong sense of self-esteem, to feel kind of confident in ourselves. Other characteristics include having good coping skills. So again, that ties into management, knowing how to deal with difficulties inside ourselves and outside ourselves. Another characteristic of resilience is having problem-solving abilities. So being able to think about things, being able to talk about them with other people, to think a little bit outside the box, to kind of look at a situation and see different possibilities, different ways around things. Overall, people that are resilient tend to be quite motivated to address situations, to address difficulties, to move into an issue and move through it, to see a way through rather than to run or hide or avoid. They also tend to be quite optimistic and again assume that things will work out in the future. Another way to be resilient is to use the support network that you have, to engage with people in your society, in your workplace, in your family, in your friend group, and get help. So part of resilience is using the people and the tools around you to deal with a difficult situation. So some of us really build our resilience around our support network, through our families, through our colleagues and our friends. Many situations in life are bigger than us, and using the support of people can really help us to deal with the particularly difficult situations in life. Another way that we learn to grow in our resilience is to learn new skills, to learn lessons from previous experiences, to learn as we go through a difficulty, and to develop and change and build our resilience, grow as a person as we go through a difficult time in our life. Some of the very important strategies to learn to develop your resilience is including things like a mindfulness practice in your life. So learning how to slow down inside, to observe how you're thinking and feeling, to become more of that observer, to watch what's happening in your life and to learn how to deal with your inner world better so that you can grow and develop. Sometimes people use things like breathing techniques, which can also help us to slow down and to calm down and to manage our stresses and our anxieties better. We also need to learn how to manage our relationships, how to connect with people in our life, how to use the support systems that we have from our family, our friends and our colleagues. We need to be engaged in our community to help us deal with the difficult issues that happen in life. We also need to know about our hidden strengths. We need to know what we are capable of, what strengths we've already built, and how to use them as effectively as we can. Most importantly, we need to introduce kindness and understanding and accepting towards ourselves. We need to learn how to address any inner critical voices that we have, or negative voices or judging voices that we have towards ourselves. We need to learn how to be kind to ourselves, supportive of ourselves, and nurture ourselves as we develop and grow. As part of this workshop, it's important to fill in the questionnaire that comes with it, answering things like, when have you been resilient in your life? What are your hidden strengths? What challenges have you already worked through, and what skills have you developed as a result of those challenges? Looking at your inner observer, what part of you watches what goes on? Can you strengthen that part inside? Can you become better at managing your mind, at observing your mind, at not being controlled by your mind? Trying to understand what your inner dialogue is like. What patterns of communication do you have towards yourself? What is your typical self-talk life like? And are you happy with that self-talk? Is that okay for you? Or would you like to change it? And how can you do that? And then finally, it's time for you to write down where you feel you need to develop your resilience. Based on what you've listened to in this talk, what do you think you need to do? What has stood out for you? Where do you need to change? What would you like to grow? What would you like to develop in yourself as part of your resilience strategies going forward in your life? So I hope you can see where you're already resilient, and I hope you can learn the tools that you need to develop your resilience further. Thank you.